Three, two, one.
You ready?
You're listening to the Real Pineapple Podcast Network. Good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for listening. This is the Real Pineapple. This is your humble host, Hunter, here. And since I'm reviewing Hamilton today, which I'm excited to talk about, of course I have to have one of the smartest music people I know.
That's not true.
It is. Got my lovely girlfriend Leia here. Hi, dear.
Hello, darling.
Thank you so much for helping me out.
Of course.
So we watched this.
Of course.
So we watched this together this weekend.
Yes. And it was because we both listened to the soundtrack.
So I listened to it a little. I had heard like 2 songs off the musical. Like I had actually not heard all the songs in full. Like before this weekend, I could have probably sang a verse off of my shot, maybe, and now like that's gonna be in my head probably for the next year. Which are worse things to have stuck in your mind. But
very true.
I gotta say though, so with things being the way they are right now, and theaters being closed, and Broadway's closed until 2021, which fucking sucks. This really came out at the most, like, quote, perfect, unquote, time, as it could have, given, again, the circumstances. Colin, of course, of the podcast here, him and his beautiful wife, Nikki, went and saw Hamilton last year. So they saw the Broadway cast on their farewell tour.
So lucky.
So I remember looking up what tickets were for Hamilton, and holy crap, they are not cheap. They're like 500 on the low end. I saw in some places. Like, it's insane. And I have to admit, like, this was kind of like Harry Potter for me, in the sense that I didn't get it initially. It was one of those things I went back later and watched and went, oh, I get why everyone loves this so much. It was kind of the same thing with Hamilton. I was like, okay, I'll get to it at some point, but I wanted to actually see it, not just hear the soundtrack over and over again, because I think it does take away from it. We can't see what the actors and dancers are actually doing. With that said, after seeing it, oh my god, this is like... I have one small gripe, but it's so fucking wonderful, and it somehow lived up to the hype that it had, which is really impressive, actually.
Yeah, I remember my sister was obsessed with Hamilton for a really long time, my youngest sister. And she kept bothering me to listen to the soundtrack, so I finally did. But I promised myself that I wouldn't watch any clips or anything until I could actually see it either in person or until something like this came out. And it came out 5 years ago. So,
which is crazy to think about. It's been that long.
Right. It's taken 5 years for the majority of people to be able to see it, which is crazy.
Yeah, so this really reminds me, in a sense, of back in the 2010s when you had all those concert films. Like, U2 had one. There was a Hannah Montana one, I remember. God knows why. There was like a Rolling Stones one. But so many of those concert movies were successful because, it's like, okay, can everyone afford to drop a couple $100 to see Rolling Stones or Elton John, in concert? No. But can you spend, $20-$30 to go see this in IMAX and feel like you're there? It's like, yeah, absolutely. And this is directed by Thomas Kail. He went ahead. He's directed a couple things. He directed Grease Live, which I remember actually watching and going, that was actually pretty good. He's done Fiddler on the Roof. He did a show, a limited FX series, which I haven't reviewed and probably will at some point now, because it's got Sam Rockwell, Michelle Williams. I'm gonna butcher his name. I think it's Foss Verdon, which was for FX, which was really excellent. And he does a great job with the camera work here, because anytime you need to be seeing something, there's this one song that we'll get to where Eliza's singing, and it's filmed like you're looking down at her, and you just feel the emotion of what she's singing. And I just went, oh, bravo. And there's multiple shots like that. I took a step back and went, wow, okay, like he really knows how to film this like a musical, I mean, which it is, but not to make it feel cinematic too at the same time, which is hard to do.
I'd agree with that.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm gonna let you kind of, because I know you have notes here. I'm kind of just, so I'm gonna let you.
I have a lot of notes.
So I'm gonna let you just like, where would you like to start with this?
Oh gosh, so to begin with, the music is not what you'd expect. It has a lot of rap music in it. It's kind of a rap Broadway crossover almost. You can kind of see the like similarities with kind of Jonathan Larson's work. You see a lot of similarities in Lin-Manuel Miranda's earlier stuff, like In the Heights. You see, and it kind of ties back to, there's this thing called a vernacular principle, and that is when you're kind of taking the music that people are listening to kind of paraphrase here. You're taking the music that people are listening to right now, and you're applying it to what you're creating. You're applying it to your shows. And in Broadway, that's very hard, because to begin with, Broadway is like 60 years behind that curve.
Okay.
To begin with. So, and you kind of see Jonathan Larson really kind of hooked on to that with his productions of Tick, Tick, Boom, and he kind of started it with Tick, Tick, Boom, and then he really came into it with Rent. And then you see Lin-Manuel Miranda come in with it within the Heights, and then you see him come into it with his films, and you really see it in Hamilton, where you see rap come into the picture, and you see, you know, notes of Bernstein coming in. You see notes of Larson. You see Lin-Manuel, I know you're grinning, Lin-Manuel Miranda's earlier stuff. And it's interesting because a lot of critics really did not like the rap music.
Yeah, I could see that.
When this first came out, because they said that it was too rhymey. I read a couple different articles, and there was Terry Teachout from the Washington Street Journal,
Okay.
which is like a big name,
Yeah.
and then Michael Rydell from the New York Post. And they both, to paraphrase, they basically said that rap should only exist in these types of shows to talk, sing speech, kind of. And it's interesting because Lin-Manuel Miranda does a really good job of kind of taking some aspects of that sing-song speech from rap and kind of incorporating it into different themes. And if I wanted to talk about the themes, I could talk for literally 5 hours. Like, it's so crazy. But even when you and I were watching it, there were a couple different themes that I kept telling you were kind of popping up.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting because if you listen to it, and a lot of maybe non-musically inclined or musically trained people will notice it, but you probably will, in that a lot of, every single character has their own kind of musical motif.
Yeah.
And that's kind of a musical phrase that kind of describes the character, or kind of follows the character around. And two of the most prominent, there's the My Shot motif, and there's the Aaron Burr motif. And those are kind of the ones I really want to talk about because they're kind of the most present for me anyway. And the My Shot motif, which is real fun. And if you're non-musical, this will make no sense to you. But for my musical friends, this is for you. So the My Shot progression is a minor 1 chord followed by a major 3 chord, and then a minor 4 chord followed by a major 6 and a major 5. And the showing of the minor chord to the major chord, that minor 1 to a major 3, the minor 4 to a major 6, that is kind of showing the strive and ambition in what Hamilton's trying to do. And it's showing the kind of key movement of ambition. But it also includes the downside in that they're never satisfied with it. So that minor to major shows that strive through ambition, but that minor represents the non-satisfaction of...
As I'm dying over here.
Right, that non-satisfaction. So, and it's interesting because it doesn't just show up in My Shot. It shows up when Washington is talking to Hamilton, saying, that sequence of everyone's eyes are on you.
Yeah.
It comes up in Satisfied. It comes up when Angelica is doing her piece about honor and losing love. And it's that talk of trying to pursue something more, but leaving something behind.
Okay.
And then the second one, and it also shows up, and I'm going to bring this in after Aaron Burr. So then we have the Aaron Burr progression. And it's interesting because his is a major 1 chord, followed by a minor 6 chord, and then a minor 3. And every musical friend that I know will hear that minor 3 and just hate their lives momentarily, because you have and you have in music you usually have you bring a chord sequence back to a 1 or a 5, something that kind of feels final enough.
Okay.
But Aaron Burr never gets that satisfaction musically. Okay, that 3 represents the fact that he can try as much as he can, and he goes from that you have that 1 chord and you're like, okay, we're solid, and then you have that minor 6, and usually a minor 6 is going to lead to a major 1 or a major 5, and then it doesn't. It leads to a minor 3. So it shows that no matter how hard he freaking tries, he's always going to be stuck. He's never going to come home.
God, you are a nerd.
I know! It's insane! But then, in the second act, when Aaron Burr is singing about the room where it happens, that My Shot progression comes into it. And it shows his blossoming of ambition.
So I want to talk about. So we need to bring him up. So Leslie Odom Jr. is the guy who plays Aaron Burr. Yes. I've seen him. So I remember seeing him in Smash, which was like almost a decade ago, which is weird to think about. It's been that long. But he was also in Murder on the Orient Express, the 2017 version, which he's on Central Park right now. Like the couple episodes I've heard, because I was sitting here, I was like, I know that voice. I was like, that makes a lot of sense. I think he is just fantastic in this. It's gonna come down to, because I think a lot of people by default are gonna go Lin-Manuel Miranda is my favorite out of the cast. Personally, he's not my favorite.
Who would you say is your favorite?
My personal favorite is I hope I'm not butchering her name. I'm sorry if I am. Philippa Sue, who plays Eliza. I think she's
amazing. Philippa Sue is. Oh. I
think she's my favorite. Like, I remember because her kind of her stand-up piece. I was gonna make a reference to Frozen, but never mind, because I would actually feel terrible comparing what she does.
Well, there is a character from Frozen in this.
True, and we will get to him. But Eliza, though, she gets this just showcase number. It reminded me a lot of Lady Gaga's last song in A Star Is Born. Like, it really kind of took me back to that, where I remember going, "Oh God, you're about to break my heart, aren't you?" She has this song "Burn," and Alea will tell you that's when. So
we both cried.
So I cried at multiple points during this, but that was just the number for me that I just went, oh God! Like, that's when the waterworks just started, because you just feel her pain. And Hamilton, people will, and I read some reviews online because people are dumb, and of course, there is that complaint of, well, how historically accurate is this? Yes, there are some things that are definitely tweaked and adjusted, but to be honest, if you don't have that problem with history books, why you hold it against Hamilton? So I would just like to put that out there. But when you found out that Hamilton had an affair, and the way Hamilton had the affair and the way he gets like his comeuppance for that is pretty rough, honestly. I was like, damn, that's. I
mean, the dude deserved it.
I mean, he did. He totally did. But it's some shit when it happens. I was like, oh wow. And Eliza's number about removing herself from the narrative, it's so hard, because it's not just the narrative she's clearly removing herself from. She just can't do what he's doing anymore. And
well, that in itself is another theme, because if you remember in the beginning of the show, she's saying, you're not allowing me into your narrative.
Yeah.
Please let me in.
Yeah.
And then towards the middle, she's like, we're happy inside this narrative. Just stay with me. We're happy right here. And then that song comes up and she's like, you know what? Just take me out of it.
Yeah.
Remove me from your life. I don't want to be a part of this narrative anymore.
But then it's great though because Hamilton, realizes that she is enough, and his I wouldn't even say retort, but his humbling of himself in the song they kind of sing together. I remember just going,
Quiet Uptown.
Thank you. I remember just going, wow, that's really powerful. And she's furious as she should be, and you go, oh man, you're in a really shitty spot, especially back then, of how things were. It's it's really it hurts you, but in like a good way, and she loses probably the most, honestly.
Oh yeah.
Because I mean, yeah, you could say Hamilton lost, this and that, but Eliza emotionally, for what she has to do and just holding things together, I really think she loses the most, and it's heartbreaking when the play. I mean, spoilers obviously, because it's not like where.
I mean, you learned it all in the history books, hopefully.
Or at least you should have. But her journey, I thought, was a very pleasant surprise because I didn't expect her to be as featured as she was. So when the play's as much about her as it is about Hamilton at the end of the day, which I was like, oh, that's a pleasant surprise.
Yeah, well, she was a very important part of Hamilton's journey, because for me it kind of goes back to that saying, like, behind every strong man is a stronger woman.
Nice.
and well, that's how I felt, because they in the play or in the show, they do you do see their firstborn son Philip die at the age of 19 in a duel. And she actually bore him 8 kids, including Philip.
Holy crap.
Yeah. So they only show Philip.
Oh my god.
Yeah, and actually one of their oldest daughters, I think her name was Angelica after her sister. If I'm incorrect, I'm sorry about that. But she was 17 when the oldest son Philip died. And that daughter ended up being almost completely mentally incapacitated after that. And she was just a child, basically, until she was 72. And Elizabeth Hamilton didn't die until I think she was 97.
Damn.
Yeah, so that it was the duel and the death of her oldest son played a huge part in the family dynamic.
You talk about how they talk about how people sometimes die of a broken heart. I mean, if someone honestly would have had an excuse to die from one, it would have been Eliza. But the fact that she ends up being as strong as she is and really carrying on, not even Hamilton's legacy, but really her own legacy, like her own legacy, kind of being born out of the tragedy of Hamilton's shortcomings of him wanting to be able to do everything and have it all. It's really fascinating how that unintentionally ended up kind of being almost, I don't want to say a good thing, but it showed how strong she was. That's how I'll go.
Yeah, well, she lived out her own legacy. She lived out Hamilton's legacy, her family's legacy. She helped the Washington's legacy. She was really good friends with Martha Washington and John Adams' wife. She was considered one of the top socialites of their time as well. So I think Philippa Soo did such an amazing job showing the strength and vulnerability and quiet leadership and caring that a lot of people don't really think about when they think of Elizabeth Hamilton.
So if I do have a complaint, and I kind of do.
Oh no.
Jasmine, I'm gonna butcher this. Jasmine, Cephas Jones.
No, that sounds right.
As a Peggy Schuler.
Skylar,
pardon me. I barely remember her being in the play, if I'm being completely honest. Like,
as Peggy?
Yeah.
Well, that's how it's supposed to be.
Is it?
Peggy wasn't really... I mean, the Schuyler sisters in themselves, when they were just sisters, were considered the debutantes, the socialites. But Peggy wasn't really written about all that much.
Okay.
So, and she wasn't really too much a part. Angelica was more of a part of the Hamiltons' narrative than Peggy was.
Okay.
And that's why in the play she's portrayed that way. She was just that kind of the youngest sister in the story. Hamilton was friends with both of her sisters, but more so with Angelica. And that's kind of where the rumors of his maybe mental affair with Angelica kind of spewed out of, because they talked a lot.
Okay.
They sent a lot of letters back and forth. So that's kind of why Peggy wasn't as present as Angelica, because
Okay.
Angelica was more of a part of the Hamilton's narrative
Okay.
than Peggy was.
Okay, I mean that's an interesting. Oh, okay, I wasn't aware of that because I was just sitting here really racking my brain. I'm like, I know there's 3 of them, but I cannot. I like could not for the life of me remember like even what she looked like. I had to actually look up something. I actually had to look something up to see who. Like what she looked like and everything, because I was really blanking. I want to talk about Renee Elise Goldsberry, who plays Angelica. The song that she sings about Hamilton, about how like how he'll never be
Satisfied?
Yeah, like that song in particular. So the thing is, like, it's gonna really be a challenge, I think, for a lot of people to pick what their favorite song is, because I think a lot of people will go "My Shot" by default, because that is the biggest, I would say, like almost song buffet, because there's so much going on in that song, and it the first time it's almost overwhelming. I was like, oh my god, this is a lot to process. Like, okay, but especially the reprise, they kind of mix in "My Shot" later on, which I thought was just so well done. But the initial version of the song, it hits you so hard, and it's a long song too. Like it really does like start off slow and really builds and builds and builds until it gets to this like almost this triumphant score when the horns and everything come in and you go, oh wow, okay, like it's like Lin-Manuel knows music or something.
What?
But I will say for me, maybe my favorite character not named Eliza is in my only other real complaint. I want more King George.
My gosh.
King George is wonderful.
He's the perfect comedic interlude between sad moments.
Yeah.
And it's just beautiful.
Yeah.
Just beautiful. So he's played by Jonathan Groff.
Yeah.
Who is also in Frozen.
Yeah.
And he voices Kristoff, which we both just found out.
Yeah, which I was like, that makes a lot of sense though, because when I watch those Frozen movies, I always think, oh, Kristoff's fun. And it's like,
Exactly.
And it's like, oh, of course you're King George too.
Of course. But he's just, I mean, his vocals are, of course, effortless. I mean, just, and his theme just is super playful. And it's just that little, like, malicious, like, I'm gonna get you.
well, it's not even a little malicious, because he talks about how I'll kill everyone that you know to show you all my love.
But he's this like benevolent king who's like, I'm gonna get you and kill your children.
Yeah, it's like horrifying though. It's like someone saying like, I'll shoot up your house and smiling while they do it.
Well, that's King George for you.
I mean, yeah, I mean it's really intense. I was like, oh wow, okay, but he does it in such a weirdly charming way. It's like
he's the perfect maniacal king.
Yeah, I really would have liked more King
I think
George.
you said that he reminded you of the king from Robin Hood.
So yeah, Disney's making a live action a CG Robin Hood remake, which I don't understand why they're doing that, but whatever. If you're gonna get someone to voice Prince John, it needs to be Jonathan Groff. Like, it's right there. Just have him be Prince John. He would be perfect.
He kind of reminds me of if you could have a singing version of King John from Robin Hood Men in Tights.
I could see
like
that.
if he sang, that would be this King George.
That would, yeah. Actually, I could totally see that. So I just want to go through a couple other things here. What's his name? Christopher Jackson, who played George Washington. I never thought I would be hyped to see George Washington in anything, but when he gets the introduction, I was like, oh hell yeah, George Washington! And the scenes that he has, the song, was it Right Hand Man?
I think so. Yes.
With Lin-Manuel Miranda, it's a badass fucking song, and it really showcases Washington being a badass. It's like, okay, I'm all for this, and where Washington exits the story, I thought was really well really well handled, especially for where Hamilton is in his life. I like the way they kind of close that loop. But the actor himself really does have this aura of authority about him, which you need if you're going to be, playing George Washington. Yeah, he really does command the stage in a way that I was like, okay, like this is what we needed from this character, like right on.
Oh, definitely.
You talking about the rap aspects. I'm always very picky on, when people choose to rap. I'm always just like, okay. So when I kind of heard about this play initially, I was a little nervous. I was like, okay, I could see how this could go wrong like 1,000 ways. But there's a point where like Eliza beatbox, and I was mid sip of my drink, and I legit almost spit it out. I was like, holy shit, what? Because it's good shit. It's like, it's not bad. Like everyone.
I mean, it's cute.
Yeah,
it's playful.
It honestly felt like it felt like Lin-Manuel was like, okay, cool, you got the role. You're gonna listen to like A Tribe Called Quest. You're gonna listen to some Public Enemy, like this. Like it really felt like he educated people on hip hop before they really probably even got their scripts. Like it felt like that was a prerequisite.
Well, he also, I'm gonna go on Lafayette and Jefferson's actor Daveed Diggs. He himself as a person, not as a character in this, but as a person, he is an experimental rapper. And
that makes a lot of sense.
Yep. And I think, and that's why Lafayette's rap is so freaking fast.
Yes, it is.
It is ooh, man. Like, you try and comprehend the words and you're at least 5 seconds behind. Like, it's insane. But Lin-Manuel Miranda actually came to Diggs early in the production process of the show itself, before 2015, with these rap parts. And I think he did have Daveed Diggs particularly in mind.
Okay.
When he wrote these rap pieces for Jefferson and for Lafayette. And it's fun because he, especially in that little part where when Philip is growing up, I think they say he's like 9 or 10.
Yeah, I think it's 10.
Yeah, it's like his 10th birthday, and he comes up with this cute little rap about his dad.
Yeah, which is adorable.
Right. So his mom like runs up to Hamilton's office, and she's like, no, you have to come down here because he's got a birthday present. So he comes down, and she starts beatboxing for Philip, and Philip does this really cute rap, and Hamilton's like totally into it. And I love that little moment because in history anyway, Hamilton is described by his kids as being a very gentle father figure and being very, very, forward with them and trying to teach them to be good people. And he was very gentle and I'm trying to think of the word, but he always tried to make them feel like they were doing something good.
Okay.
And I think that little moment there was really, really sweet.
Necessary,
in that,
too.
yes.
Like, yeah.
But the rap aspect is just so cool in this show. And I really do think it does serve a purpose.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that's the thing about this play in particular that I was so impressed by. Nothing felt wasted. Everything felt very deliberate, and
everything did have a purpose,
which I really appreciate. The big thing for me, because I always watch this on plays, because I thought, because again, look, this is my job. I'm supposed to look for stuff that's wrong, and I was really looking like, okay, like when are you gonna fuck up? And I appreciate so much the ensemble, because when the ensemble is harmonizing with the main cast members, it never feels off, it never feels pitchy, it feels like they've practiced it literally 1,000 times to get it right.
Oh, and that's how shows go.
Yeah, and just seeing it, just sitting there watching, I was like, oh my god, they're not fucking up. Like, not even like in a weird way disappointed, because I'm like, wow, how are you still like every single fucking thing just seems like it hits, whether it's the dancers in the background, whether it's Hamilton himself about to hit a high note and everyone harmonizing set him up for said high note. It's like a perfect volleyball set before someone spikes it. It just seems like everything is set up so perfectly for other pieces to complement it. It's really impressive. We could talk about this all day. So
one little thing that I love just about the end credits, since we're kind of I'm looking at it on the computer right now.
Yeah.
But I love that they actually show a picture and the individual name of every ensemble member.
Yes.
And I think especially right now when you think about it, every single one of these people that created this show, that are in this show, that helped produce this show, like everything, they're all out of work right now.
Yeah.
And the fact that they made that decision to really make sure that everybody on that stage got their name up to shine just as much as the leading characters was super, super important.
Agreed.
And if you're gonna watch this, like, watch through all 8 minutes of the end credits, because those people deserve to have their names seen.
They do.
You know, because all of them are out of business right now. And if you used to pay $500 for a ticket to go and see their show, and now you can pay $6.99 to watch it on Disney Plus, like, they deserve that at least.
Yeah. No.
You know, they're fantastic, and every single ensemble member has a purpose throughout the show.
Yeah.
Which I love.
Yeah, it really felt... So, the one quick thing I wanted to bring up as we wrap up here, I love the fact that Hamilton himself, and, oh my god, why am I blanking on the one sister's name?
Angelica?
Angelica, thank you. I love the fact that her and Hamilton at a point are reciting Shakespeare back and forth to each other. I was like, that's a very subtle... I was like, that's a subtle touch. I was like, if you're not a Shakespeare fan, you won't... Like, it will mean nothing. But I was like, okay, I really appreciate that.
Well, I think it's funny that they don't mention that actually, like, I think 2 or 3 years before she and Hamilton had met, it was right around this time when Angelica actually eloped with John Church.
Really?
Mm-hmm. And they had 8 kids.
Oh, shit. Damn.
So she was... I think it's interesting because in the show you see that Angelica and Hamilton are both kind of on that wavelength where they're both exceptionally smart, almost too smart for their own good. And they're both... And in Angelica's song Satisfied, they're both singing about how... And she's mainly singing about how neither of them are ever going to be satisfied.
Yeah.
Because not a lot of people are at the same level as they are. And that's also kind of where that, like, affair rumor came up with that. Because they were both kind of on the same wavelength intellectually.
Yeah.
Whereas Eliza, not any less smart, but more of, like, the doe-eyed, like, stay-at-home mom type.
Yeah.
Rather than Angelica.
Not showcasing her intelligence as much.
Yeah, exactly. We could dissect this for hours.
We could. I have genuine admiration for everyone who's involved with this. If they ever do like a 10-year reunion or something like that, I will pay. Oh, I will
pay out of my teeth.
Yeah,
to see that.
I will pay a pretty penny to see this. Props to Lin-Manuel Miranda for being able to put this shit together, because again, when you hear the concept on paper, it sounds absurd, and the fact that it works even half as well as it does, let alone being, for me, what I think is my favorite musical. I mean, I haven't seen Phantom in a while, so
this beats Phantom.
Fair enough. Like, but I would like to have Phantom and West Side Story fresh in my brain before I make that declaration. But for me, this is easily top 3 musicals for me personally. I really don't have a complaint. Like I said, I wanted more King George. That was really, but that's just a personal preference of me wanting more King George. But
I think though, to me, I think King George was like that funky little character that like came up after like something sad or crazy happened, and he was just like, "Hello."
Yeah,
back to reality.
I mean, he definitely
not reality, but you know,
he definitely served his purpose, and I can't be mad at that. But again, it was like Jojo Rabbit. Like I said, like it was like I wanted more Hitler, which I never thought I'd say. I want more King George. But what are you gonna do? But yeah, this is a fan-fucking-tastic. I genuinely don't have an actual complaint about this, and I really did look at reviews online that were negative. There was only like 1 on Rotten Tomatoes, but
how dare they?
I know, right? It's just there's always has to be one, but yeah, fan-fucking-tastic for me. So yeah, what about you?
I would give a fan-effing-tastic as well.
Fair. Yeah,
Definitely.
I mean, musically, I don't think there's a flaw with it.
There wasn't any point where I was watching it that, like, there's, when you listen to music that's really, really good and you get, like, goosebumps and your heart kind of, like, flutters and you're like, oh my God, this song is so good.
Yeah.
And you're, like, can't kind of contain it and your whole body feels like it's just kind of vibrating because the music is just so good.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was happening the entire film. Like, I felt like I'd run a marathon after watching this show because my whole, like, my brain, my body, my eyes, like, everything was just amazing. Like, the set was amazing, the choreography was amazing, the staging was stellar.
Yes, it was.
Like, oh my God. It was just, there was nothing that, and mind you, this wasn't a production that was just, like, thrown together for the cameras to show. Like, they'd been doing this show for months leading up to filming. So they were very familiar with how this show was supposed to go because they'd been performing it for months. I've seen, I'm friends of friends with people who had seen it a couple months before filming. And they said it was just like, it was like reliving it. And that's really, it's crazy that these actors are just that good at what they do.
Yeah, it really is an incredible piece of art, and everyone involved with that should be incredibly proud of what they accomplished and what they put forth. I wanted to shout this one last person, Paul Tazwell. He was the costume designer. And
Amazing.
And again, me being somewhat of a theater nerd, I was like, why do I know that name? Because I remember he did A Raisin in the Sun. I remember that specifically. That and Color Purple. He got a Tony Award nomination for that. He also got one for In the Heights. Got one for Memphis. Got one for Street of Car Named Desire. Got one for Hamilton. Won an Emmy for The Wiz Live. And then got a an Emmy Award nomination for Jesus Christ Superstar live in concert. I mean, his body of work is impeccable. Like, you just look through it, it's like, wow. And the costumes in this are just beautiful. Like, they're so beautiful. Thomas Jefferson's outfit, I don't know how or why it ever worked.
Purple velvet, like, what suit?
Yeah.
It's like the 1780s version of a suit.
Essentially, yeah.
I'm not sure what it's called.
But it's beautiful and I need it. So
well, what I really loved about the costuming was that if you look really, like, closely from the beginning to the end, is that every costume kind of shows the aging of the character and the maturing of the character.
Yeah.
Because especially if you look at Eliza's dresses,
yes.
She goes from her, like, petticoats and her corsets, and then as she kind of goes on, she has kind of a looser corset and a bigger skirt. And then towards the end, she has this more of a matronly A-line kind of at-home gown. And you kind of see that with all of the characters. All of their age is also depicted in what they're wearing, which is, like, the littlest thing, but it's just, it's amazing.
It really is. Yet another reason to like this. But yeah, so guys, it's on Disney Plus. If you don't have this is one of those things that if you don't have Disney Plus, it's worth paying the $6.99 even for a month just so you can actually watch it. Because
do the trial run just to see this.
Yeah. They're not offering free trials anymore, so you would have
okay.
to.
Well, whatever. Pay still, the $7.
Yeah, it's $7. Like, come on, just pay for it. Support this because. Yeah, I would love to know what the streaming numbers on this are. I'm sure it's very high because everyone I've talked to has already watched it a couple times. I'll watch this again probably before the week is over. Like,
well, what's fun too is that, like, as a teacher, I'm also seeing that, kids are getting more interested in the history of Hamilton, and the history of our forefathers because of this, and it's fun because this show was actually an adaptation of a 2004 book,
which I was not aware of
by Ron Chernow.
Which I wasn't aware of until the credits started rolling. I was like, oh.
Yeah, so now a lot of teachers are getting permission to drag up that book and have kids read it, and now they can see Hamilton. And I'm a firm believer in being able to connect reading and song and a whole bunch of different formats of learning, and it's really kind of opening the doors with that. Well, and it's really, really fun to see that in little kids,
Well, if it's gonna help kids who want to learn, then hell yeah.
I mean, our forefathers were not perfect.
Yeah, no, they were not.
Kids need to learn that early.
Yeah, they really do. But guys, have you seen Hamilton? Let us know what you thought in the comments below. You can go ahead and like us on Facebook at The Real Pineapple. Follow yours truly on the Twitter at JHunterRealPineapple. You can follow Scott on Twitter at NearmanTheFirst. You can follow, like, share, and subscribe. You can find us on SoundCloud, Apple and Google Podcasts, Podbean, Stitcher Radio, Spotify, and iHeartRadio at The Real Pineapple. We will have reviews up this week for Twilight Zone Season 2. We'll have reviews up for the Babysitters Club for some reason, and we'll have a review up for Force of Nature, which, I have so much to say about that one. But thank you so much for talking all music with us.
Thank you.
I know you were like, you're gonna talk Hamilton? Like, I'll talk that.
Well, I'm glad that you asked, because I definitely went down a lot of rabbit holes that I'm glad that I went down.
That's completely fair. But guys, seriously though, support this. Please stay safe out there. Hope you're having a good weekend or a good week, and we will talk to you guys soon. Take care.